So what did that YouTube video say? Turn the pelvis 45, turn the shoulders 90. That's it. That must be right. Feels, oh, I've got it feels tight, but it must be right. Let's try that. That felt like a lot of hard work. And I'm sure you've probably been there yourself on the driving range, doing what the textbooks instruct. Turn those hips, rotate that pelvis 45, get the 90-degree shoulder turn or even more, create that tension through the body, resist with the lower body, and then let the whole thing fire like a spring. Well, it doesn't really work like that because we don't get rotation that way. And if we are trying to get rotation that way, by literally trying to just turn the shoulders and the hips, we're probably making life more difficult than it needs to be, because the body rotates naturally and it rotates from the ground. And this is what they don't want you to know, because otherwise they'd have to rewrite the textbooks, because golf's generally being taught and learned from images, particularly 2D images. People have picked up on functional movement patterns, but they've looked at characteristics of those patterns. So they've looked at things like how much the pelvis rotates and how much the shoulders rotate. And then that becomes golfing folklore, if you like, on theory. How many times have you heard turn your back to the target, or get the left shoulder under the chin, or point your belt buckle away from the target? All these things which may be part of a rotation, but aren't actually the true underlying cause of rotation. So we're looking cause and effect. Rotation is an effect, so we're looking at the causes, which are essentially the forces that we're using and all these different planes of motion that contribute to rotation. And it starts at the ground. Now, it's very easy to make a movement and not actually create rotation from the ground. So we're going to use the pressure plate just to demonstrate this. I can make a rotation, and you'll see by looking at the pressure plate, I'm going to rotate 45 and 90, and you can see the pressure at the ground hardly moves. But more importantly, if you look at the white line between the feet, that's the line of pressure, and that's indicating the rotational component. So this is torque. This is the rotational force that we're looking at. Ultimately, we want to be using this rotational force from the ground to create rotation with the body, so we can transfer and accumulate that through the body, making rotation easier throughout the body. But if we're not using that torque from the ground, it's essentially working against us. It's a resistance that we're having to rotate against. And generally we're going to go to the bigger segments, we're going to go to the torso and the pelvis, and the lower body's remaining static, which means now we've got an ankle joint which is not really being utilised, the knee joints are fairly static, and the hips are also, though we're trying to turn the pelvis, but in an effort to stay stable, we're not really getting the functional range of the hips. So we're getting pelvis rotation, but ultimately we go into our rib cage. But the problem with this is that our lumbar spine is in the middle of this. We've got tension through that lower back, and this is restricting, it's making it more difficult to rotate. So then we might find we have to overuse the arms and things like this. So quite often these overswings, if you like, or these excessive arm swings with lots of bend of the elbows and things like that, they're just a functional compensation for something else. It's cause and effect through the system. So quite often we need to strip it back and start to understand, appreciate how we can utilise the ground with the whole body. And you can do this very simply by just looking behind you. So if you just stand with your knees just flexed gently, not so much a golf posture, but knees slightly flexed, hips slightly flexed, and then just imagine your mate's behind you and just turn around. Maintaining that position with the rib cage, just turn the head back, and what does that feel like? And how easy or difficult was it to make that turn? Your body's going to utilise its natural movement. It's going to utilise its accessible ranges with ease. It's not going to create excessive stress on the body, not for such a simple task as looking behind. So that's something we can use just to explore the ease of rotation. What we can also sense while we're doing this is how we're using our feet. What does it feel like to actually use the feet to rotate the head? So what you might notice when you look at the pressure plate is you start to tap in to that torque. So we're actually using the ground to create that rotational force. So we've got a sequence through the body. and we're turning the head pretty quick, not slow, okay, it's not a slow movement. Use the feet, see how quick you can turn your head without introducing any risk of injury. How quick, how brisk can you turn your head using the feet? And that's going to give you an idea of how we can tap into this rotation at speed. And now, because the pelvis is rotated freely, the lower back's rotated, and we can let the rib cage rotate. So we're getting this sequential rotation through the body, this gradual rotation, and this natural loading with ease within ranges that are comfortable. Just like looking behind us. We can also start to look maybe up to the ceiling. So we're going to introduce a bit of side bend. So looking up there now, and then maintaining this rib cage and shoulder position and just turning the head. And that's starting to give us a sense of how we can rotate on an incline with the ball being on the floor. So what we're exploring and experiencing are the planes of motion for the backswing. We're experiencing the rotation, we're experiencing the lateral flexion and the flexion and extension, and how these components organically configure to create an overall rotation of the body. So we've got the lower body function to facilitate this upper body function, and it happens like any other primitive motion, like looking behind. And looking behind on an incline, so we're going to look up to the ceiling and then explore initiating this movement from the ground using that rotation. And to help amplify that sensation we're getting, we can use some balance pads. So we're creating a really effective feedback loop here, which is going to help timing as well, because these are going to move first. We're going to use the balance pads to initiate the whole action. We're not moving the upper body with very little action down here. Straight away we can see I'm not really utilising the ground because the balance pads aren't really moving, because my feet aren't really engaged with them. I'm not really moving the ankles and the feet and the legs, so I must be doing all the work with my upper body. So if you just try and make a swing on these, just a backswing, and then you realise there's not a lot happening with the balance pads, then you can be pretty well assured that you've not been using your lower body, certainly not to initiate it anyway. So maybe this has been redundant, maybe this is adding to that resistance and making it more difficult to make a turn. Maybe it's making it more difficult to find your natural swing using the club head, the weight of the club head, to create that speed. You're not possibly making the swing arc you could. So let's go to the ground and let's experience what it's like. And it's actually the heel-toe motion. It's like walking. So the pressure actually meanders kind of into the heel and then through the foot and off the toe, just like walking. We can actually use the walking motion to initiate the action for rotation of the body. So we can start to walk, and then we can start to let the pelvis rotate with that walking action. Let the belt buckle twist. And now I've got that rotational force from the ground. What we've actually got now, if I move these away and we look at the pressure plate, we've got that torque from the ground. We've got that line of pressure now rotating by using that heel-toe action. So this might feel at first like a lot of ankle, knee and hip movement, but actually as you start to rotate the whole body with it, you'll start to recognise how much easier it makes the full body rotation. And when you start to use this action to initiate the drill we used looking behind, you can start to feel this sequence of rotation through the body. So we can do the drill on the balance pads. We can use this action to now explore that full lower body rotation, moving the pelvis with ease, naturally loading and looking behind, and starting to get a sense of how much movement you can access with the lower body to assist with the full body rotation. And then looking up to the ceiling, not directly above, so maybe on a 45-degree angle, and then just have a look down. Just getting a sense of where you are in space with the amount of tilt. As you look up, your body's naturally going to side bend. And then you can put the club in the hands and get a feel for where you are. And then we can start to do that with the club in the hands. What I suggest we do is get a sense, first of all, just for the speed of the pressure shift through the feet, and then we can move the pressure pads away. Now we can appreciate what the ground's offering us in respect of movement with the feet and the forces we can recruit. And now we can start to explore that speed and how that assists with the ease of rotation. And then we can put the club in, and then we can start to look and use the club now with the looking up drill. And then look back down to where the ball would be. And we're starting to get a sense of the full body rotation. You could do this exercise with a driver, and you won't need to look up to the ceiling quite as steep. It's a longer, shallower club, so you can look a little bit more behind you and simulate that driver swing. So it's a slightly different feel as opposed to maybe a wedge or an iron, which is going to be a little bit more upright. A shorter club, slightly more upright swing. So you can start to appreciate the differences in the rotations with the different clubs too. And then have a go with the ball. So you can make a swing looking behind. And then look back and then play the shot. So you can make it a dynamic action and explore that range, look back, swing through, and enjoy moving, enjoy swinging the golf club, enjoy the movement potential that you access that is there to be recruited in your golf swing that you may have been restricting because of the conceptualization of how you need to move because of the 45-degree pelvis and the 90-degree shoulder turn that the textbooks say. So going all the way back to the beginning, this starts from the ground, and we've got to allow our body to move freely, just like throwing a ball. We don't think about the amount of rotation or how we're rotating, we allow it to happen. So using that same philosophy in your golf swing and using that with the drills, keeping that philosophy in your mind, allowing the body to explore its movement. Don't hold it back, allow it to move, but with ease. We don't want to be risking injury, so at no point should you be feeling excessive stress or tension in. We're not forcing the body into a position, we're allowing it to move freely. And these positions, they're just snapshots in time of a movement pattern. So explore the movement pattern and enjoy swinging the golf club for the sake of swinging the golf club. It's an enjoyable experience, and we should just be exploring swinging the club using the whole body, not isolated parts. So just like the exercise, you can explore your movement potential and tap in to that hidden rotation that the textbooks don't tell you about, but now you know. Keep this one to yourself.